Ladder bags into the black a little bit. I'm gonna show you, we're gonna show a strip fire. I want you to see, like, you know, I know you've seen it today, but look how it moves. Then we'll do dots. And then we'll do a strip fire behind the dots and watch how stuff pulls together in the middle. Watch what happens with embers, right? This is all really important because you're gonna paint a picture in your head when you go to light, like what's that gonna do? Because every time you're lighting, you're responsible for how those effects take place, right? If you're out there and you're just mindlessly going down, there's like a brush pile right here and you're just like, all right, just keep on lighting it. Well, what if you just take a second, scrape around it and like light around it and keep on going so you don't have a brush pile around the edge of your, right? People get in this mindless, like I'm just dragging a torch thing. That's not really what it is. You're an artist. You should figure out how to paint best with this torch. Okay, it changes depending on what fuels you're in, what topography, what other factors are at play, okay? So we're gonna light a little bit. We're just gonna do a strip head fire. Watch what it does. Then I'll come back through and I'll do dots. And we'll let that fire come together and see what that kind of does, how the dot fires move. So we use dot fires to reduce intensity, right? So if we light a head fire, you'll see woof. Whereas if I come back through in the same line or close enough line and just do dots every so often, we can reduce that intensity, right? So if you are in a hairy area where it's like, ooh, I don't know about that, maybe dots are the right thing. On the perimeter, we're always trying to light as clean a black as we can. Would dots be appropriate there? Yeah, not really.
Slows your burn down.
Yeah, it would slow your burn down.
I actually did use those once because we had a ripping fire in CRP. It was gonna be too hot if I just lit it a solid line on the edge. So you know it's all sucking in fire or air. I just did dots so I didn't toast the guy behind me.
So there are times where all the rules don't apply all the time, right? So you got to think about the situation. And sometimes dot fires along the perimeter can be the right thing, but you will have to let it grow to where the point is where your next one comes in and it grows and you have to secure that line. In the grass, it's harder. In leaf litter, we do it all the time.
So like one of mine that I go off of is like when you're doing the ring head fire, instead of just running a strip for the head fire, dot, walk away is dot. Because you got this fire, it's backing down the hill, for example, or against the wind, and you know, you have that time, right? You're not trying to, your perimeter, your top and your flanks are controlled. There's fire there. There's black line, there's line there. So I could go and I could just like dot, 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 and that creates that lesser fire intensity, so you're not just stripping off a big old huge head fire, because there is actual fire science that when we do the same patterns under the same conditions in the same way and the same return interval for 3 years, 5 years, you know, 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, 12 years, 15 years, etc., you do notice the effects, the second orders of the growth of the vegetation. Will that center where it all comes together all the time is going to get blown out.
Call it a donut.
Yep. Yeah,
because you're bringing in a circle, and when you ring things up, most of your intensity, your fires are coming together in the middle. So that's all that heat and intensity sucked into the middle. And so like if we were to do a ring fire here every time, we're gonna pull fire up the hill and into the middle here, and we're gonna blow these areas out. Maybe that's what you're trying to do. Goals and objectives, that will determine your ignition patterns for what you need to meet, right? So lesser intensity, more intensity. Every time we burn on Forest Service property, any real forested lands where we're doing like large areas, we might be burning the perimeter, but we have internal teams dotting down ridge tops and lighting off ridge tops so that heat is being pulled off of those ridge tops, because what you don't want to have is that fire converging on a hillside and woof, and now you've lost every tree on that hillside because you've roped it. My challenge to you all is, when we think about this from an ecological context, is what is natural, right? How would fire normally move? Well, it would rage up south-facing slopes typically, and then hit the north side where it's moist and more humid and all that stuff and shaded, and it would creep down, creep down, creep down until it hit that bottom where there's another south-facing slope. Boom! It would take off again. How about a western slope? You know, those southwestern-facing slopes are going to be hit way harder, and so those ought to probably be more grassy and other things. We put human values on those trees and the things that are out there, and so we say, oh, we want to keep these oak trees for timber. And that's where we start getting into this, like, what are your goals and what are your objectives? We have to think about all those things. For our property, it's all about wildlife. We are 100% wildlife, so we build it from the ground up. So we try to build a vegetative structure that increases, invertebrates. Those invertebrates bring in the next level, next level of the food chains. And so whatever it takes us to drive that biodiversity forward is what we're going to do. We're not as concerned with timber values because, one, we don't have that much here, and two, it's not our primary goal is to be making money off the property. But if that is your goal, you got to think about it differently and how to control your intensities.
So if you've done a ring fire, like we did 9 acres, we did a ring fire, and I'm going to burn it again in 3 years. So the second time, just a backing fire, go up the hill or up?
It just depends. It's hard to say without seeing it or knowing it.
Look at the topography, right?
And understand. And also
Yes.
remember, you're still responsible for this fire. So what can you control?
That's
You know,
fair.
can you do those things? Sometimes a ring fire is kind of what people end up doing, but can you do it in a staged way to where maybe not creating as much intensity in the middle? Could you maybe have someone go through the middle, like as your perimeter is on, come through the middle and light out the middle so it's burning away from that before you close in your ring? Stuff like that. But once again, people's safety comes first, safety of your lines, all those things come into play. It's a huge decision-making game.
And interior ignitions, that's advanced stuff. That's a whole nother class unto itself of putting someone interior. You want someone highly experienced, basically at that firing boss line lead, that they are at that level to make decisions independently about, you know, looking at fire, reading fire, understanding fire, and being able to place that fire down in a way that is going to A, help your perimeter crews, and B, they're not going to get in a place where the perimeter crews are putting fire below them or going to send head fire at them. So that's really, like, you got to be super dialed if you're going to be sitting interior on a fire.
That's called strip fires, right? Where you're doing strips inside?
You can do different firing patterns inside too.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so strip head fires are one way of doing it, but we can talk more about that. So
Yeah.
let's have everyone over here so you can actually watch the fire behavior. So everyone pop in the black. The fire behavior now. Don't worry about controlling it. We're not going to control it. It's going to hit black. It's going to do whatever. But watch how it moves. That's the most important part, because that's going to build that Rolodex in your mind of like, okay, if I need less intensity or more intensity, or here's a different pattern I could use to get what I'm trying to get to. Okay, so that's all we're doing right now. I'm just going to take small bites, but pay attention. This makes it cold. So, when you're talking about rates of spread, a really easy way to do it is to know your starting point, look at your watch, and have a distance and watch how far it goes. Let's say it moves 3 feet in 30 seconds, right? So you double that, that's your rate of spread. So it'd be 6, what we call chains per hour. That's 66 feet. One chain is 66 feet. That's how you determine a rate of spread. You can sit there and watch it for a minute, but then you don't multiply it, right? So you just sit there and watch it for about a minute, know about how far it went, that's your rate of spread. And that's pretty important for us to know, like, hey, how fast is it moving? Can we contain that? And so this is where we'd be doing our test, well, when we're on our line, we'd start with a test fire, and we're gonna try different ignition patterns to see how fast that head fire is moving versus how far the backing fire is moving. I didn't time it, but you know, you can start right now on backing fire versus head fire. You just have to know how far it went about. You ever see how it pulled away? It was just really intense. Okay. And watch how the fires interact with each other once they get closer. See how low and slow it is? There's just not as much fire to push it along faster. Whereas that's a solid line of backing, there's a solid line of head fire, it's pretty intense. But if you're looking for that intensity, you need to know what to use and when.
Anyone want to venture a guess as to why?
Why what?
Why?
Fire is eating the fuel ahead of it.
Yes, and? So each fire as it burns is pulling air, cool air from behind, right? The head fire is pushing out hot air ahead of it, but it's also drawing in cool air behind, right? It's like, what if you look at these dots here and how they're pulling, and see how there's that little bit of a nudge where the backing fire is pulling towards the dots, right? That's that same fire pulls fire, they say. And that's a function of that in-draft. Also in this case now a function of the wind. That's a big function right now, because the wind just massively picks up.
Can you go into a little bit of when to use strip fire, dot fire?
So we typically think about our strip fire on our perimeter. We're almost always going to be lighting a solid line there. There are times you use dots to reduce intensity, but that will leave gaps on your line. Part of hedge your bets, right? You want to keep a solid line of fire along your perimeter so it's black and cooling itself out as you move down the line, right? If you leave gaps and you have wind shifts or whatever, you could send a lot of fire back towards your line and it's unsecured. So we typically use, just a line of fire right on the perimeter. Dot fires can be used in the middle of the unit. Like, okay, we want this to burn out quicker, but we don't want it to be a strip head fire where it's like coming together and really hot and heavy, right? So it's just burning and letting things cool out as you go. We do that on ridge tops a lot, like we were talking about, to save timber and keep it from getting too hot. We could also use, think about your dots to lessen intensity, right? And now your spacing of dots also comes into play. Like I did a pretty tight one where it's like every 8 to 10 feet, put a dot down, right? And they start playing on each other. Whereas if you're like, I need a little bit more intensity, but not that much, maybe I do every 10 to 20 feet. So maybe that way you're reducing that intensity even more. Does that make sense?
Corners as well. I don't know
Corners
if you guys
you gotta be
ever
careful
use them
with.
for that. But
Every time we turn corners, we're creating, does anyone know the ignition pattern we're creating when we turn a corner? Especially a square corner?
Creating a chevron.
It's called a chevron. And it's like a V. Think about it. Now, when you think about fire playing off each other, what's going to happen to this fire?
Hot and intense.
So you're going to pull it really hot to that center point. Actually, we're going to show a chevron. And there's chevrons can be used in a couple different ways. You're creating more intensity with a chevron. It's a problem at a corner of a burn unit because you're creating intensity at the corner of the unit where you have you don't have as much black, and so you're creating that intensity that could throw spots and slop things over your line, right? So it's usually better to let your line kind of chew and you just keep along with it until you're ready to turn that corner. Because if you turn it really quick, you're gonna have that fire sucking together and creating a lot of intensity and fire whirls and dust and dirt whirls. The chevron, oddly enough, while it does create a lot of intensity, think of it. Remember second grade when they had the greater than or less than, and you had to figure out, and they put like little alligator teeth. They're like, don't let the alligator eat you. Okay, same kind of difference, right? We have the alligator teeth. It's more aggressive in the jaws of it, but on the back side of it, what's it doing? You're actually lessening the intensity, right? So we can use chevrons along things we want to protect. So let's say I have a brush pile that I got to burn out around quick, but I can't have the brush pile on fire because it's on a line or whatever. So I might draw a V away from the brush pile, right? It's going to collapse, it's going to burn all that stuff out real quick. Now I go to the other part of it, draw another V, pull that fire away. So it's pulling intensity away from that brush pile. Does that make sense? Because if you try to light around it, you can be pulling a lot of intensity and putting a lot of heat right there next to the brush pile. Whereas this way you eat up all the fuel really quick and you don't put any intensity on the brush pile. The same can be said for telephone poles or whatever, right? Anything you want to protect, you want to have that chevron, the V, pointed at it, not the hot part, right? So watch. scattered fuel. I think we need now. I get a better one. That one kind of scattered fuel tonight.
Oh, what?
That was big orange. Tree right in front.
Good question. I don't know.
But the fire's really pulling together.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Kind of surprising because I haven't seen it up here yet.
Well, this is kind of the right country for it, so it's possible.
People use it much around here anymore.
No. I mean, maybe I've never. It's in my neck of the woods. It's pretty rare.
Okay.
You don't really see it a lot. Kind of in the upper current country, you might see one in a very once in a great while.
You get pretty complete.
But yeah, folks don't usually mess with them. It's just like, yep, it's there. This thing, it exists. And
Talk about it
on it.
as far as intensity and severity.
They use
So,
a lot less variety.
Head fires, fires that pull together real hard,
Mm-hmm.
are high intensity,
Yeah.
low severity, lower
Especially
severity,
corner
let's say
flows.
with that.
Mm-hmm.
Versus
last 100 years.
a backing fire,
Yeah.
which is low intensity, high severity. Severity being like how far is it burning down into that soil, that duct and stuff like that. And so backing fire is actually where we get our more severe burn, and actually really good for shrub control and the, like really heavy duct removal. It'll do a better job because the head fire will push over the top of stuff a lot of times, and it won't complete burn at all. So it depends on your goal. If you're looking for a less severe burn, you might want to do more head fire and strip head fires and stuff like that, where it's not getting as much residence time. So the fire's not sitting there on the stem for as long, and you might get a better effect. If that's what you're looking for. But if you're looking to like, hey, I want to melt down some shrubs, well, I would let it back
all
fire
day,
work all
but-
day. Yeah,
I mean, you have the time.
and it's easy to control.
Yeah.
Like you can let a backing fire happen all day.
Ryan, what are your thoughts about June burning for shrubs?
June burning? I think in Missouri, I'd have a hell of a time getting anything to burn in June.
Yeah, true
Do I
story
try
for the
growing
most
season
part.
burn? One of my favorite presentations is my growing season burn presentation. I am on a mission to get more people to do growing season burns because it's a tool, and if you use the tool right, it can be really effective. And so I'm pushing a lot of people into July, August in Missouri
Okay.
to start burning.
Yeah.
Responsibly. It's thousands of acres. Like, you know, you want to do 40 acres over here, 40 acres over there. This is a lot of huge things to consider. But to do like mass burn units that are huge and like growth is kind of like a lot of people say what we're doing right now. I don't want to create problems. I'm just letting it happen. If patches don't burn, I don't come back out burn those. Like, there's no sense in me. I let a mosaic happen, and we also like to burn different times a year, different units, different shapes of the unit. If we burn the same unit at the same time every year, like Mark was talking about earlier, you get into these problems where you start creating a homogeneous ecotype. That's not acceptable in
Well, it's
ecology.
the Flint Hill. You know?
Yeah. That's a whole nother ball of wax and issues as far as like people. I mean, I love the fact there's a fire culture there,
Right. Oh,
but
yeah.
when you do it at the same time every year, you're going to tilt the system to something of less diverse
Well,
nature.
3 or 4 warm season grasses